Does J.K. Dobbins complete the Broncos backfield in 2025? And which current Denver Broncos running back would be most affected by an incoming free agent acquisition? Also, with the Colorado Avalanche, what moves are remaining to be made with the offseason and free agency just about a month away as the Colorado Avalanche prepare for the 2025 campaign? All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin in the world of the NFL, where yesterday afternoon, just around 2 o'clock, we got the news from the NFL Network's Tom Pelissero that free agent running back J.K. Dobbins was heading to Denver to visit with Sean Payton and the coaching staff and tour the facility, presumably to explore options on a free agent contract deal this year. It was reported that Dobbins was supposed to arrive at the facility last night. He was going to go to dinner with Sean Payton and members of the coaching staff, a little whining, a little dining, and he will be and is at the facility today for their OTA practice session. We will await news from Sean Payton as he is set to speak a little later this afternoon about how that meeting potentially went or any kind of nuggets or tidbits that could come from there. But conceptually speaking, it feels fair to say that this late in the offseason and with free agency that was months ago, for J.K. Dobbins to, one, still be available on the market, and two, be coming here when it wasn't reported, at least widely in my eyes, that he has visited many other teams recently, there has to be some fire behind the smoke of this visit. And that tells me one thing, that Sean Payton, George Payton, and the like are not satisfied, despite drafting R.J. Harvey in the second round of this year's draft, and despite the expectation for third-year player like Jaleel McLaughlin and a second-year player like Audric Estime to take the requisite steps to turn this running back room into what it needs to be for the Broncos offense to be complete and take the next step in 2025. And thus, additions are looking to be made. So the question becomes, does J.K. Dobbins, with his skill set and requisite injury history, complete the Broncos running back room? My answer would be, on paper, yes. J.K. Dobbins is somebody who profiles physically more similarly to like an Audric Estime at 5'10", 216 pounds. He's got a little bit more of that bruiser running back style, but make no mistake, he's got explosive playmaking ability too. He transformed that Chargers offense last season when he was healthy, and he had to miss a month or so in the middle of the season with an MCL strain. But the difference between when he was there and when he was gone was significant. And despite battling injury last year, statistically speaking, J.K. Dobbins was pretty solid. He had 900 rushing yards, added almost 200 receiving yards, putting him over the 1,000 all-purpose yard mark, and 9 touchdowns for the LA Chargers in 2024. His rookie season, after being a second-round draft pick, 55th overall by the Baltimore Ravens in 2020, he was electric. On just 134 carries, he amassed 800-plus yards rushing and was splitting carries with a guy like Gus Edwards in order to accomplish that. Injuries have been the plague of his career and what has derailed him from being a consistently top runner in the NFL. He suffered a torn ACL in the preseason of 2021 in his sophomore campaign, and he tore his Achilles in the season opening game in 2023. I mentioned he missed 4 games last season with an MCL sprain, so significant and consistent injury history has been what has plagued him thus far in his NFL career. But he's young, and when healthy, despite these injuries piling up, he has been productive and effective. So he would be a veteran presence, he would be a physical presence, and he would be somebody that would clearly come out of the gate in contention for the starting running back role in that position if and when R.J. Harvey is not ready to assume that mantle as the latest draft pick in the second round. But I think what I find interesting here is if J.K. Dobbins does become a member of the Denver Broncos in the very near future, which I would think would be the goal for both sides, given J.K. Dobbins' remaining availability on the market this late into the offseason with training camp right around the corner, and the Broncos still clearly feeling like they don't have the right recipe in that running back room. Which running back becomes the odd man out. We discussed that a little bit yesterday or earlier this week before the news of J.K. Dobbins ever came into place, just because you've got three guys in a system that's probably going to feature two most prominently, with a third lagging behind. But now, if you were to throw this into the mix with a fourth running back, one who profiles stylistically similar to another back in the room, it does make that question a little bit more intriguing. As I mentioned, physically and stylistically, J.K. Dobbins profiles more closely to Audric Estime as the bigger, bruiser, more physical back, somebody who maybe is a little bit more adept at pass protection as well, with the size to be able to stand in the pocket and protect Bo Nix from any kind of oncoming pressure. Whereas Jaleel McLaughlin and RJ Harvey profile more similar together as smaller, more slight backs whose game is predicated on speed and explosive playmaking ability, both as a runner and as a receiver. When we had this conversation pre-J.K. Dobbins, I told all of you that my opinion was that Jaleel McLaughlin finds himself as the odd man out in that three-man room of RJ Harvey, Audric Estime, and Jaleel. And despite the fact that Jaleel at times looked like the most explosive, effective runner on the team because he was in competition with Javonte Williams, who was brutally ineffective, and Audric Estime, who was brutally inconsistent and found himself struggling and fighting for carries in order to prove himself early in the season before not even getting a jersey in a playoff game as a rookie draft pick in that year in the running back room. So if you throw J.K. Dobbins into the mix, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it changes anything all that much. I could see a parallel as to why someone might say, well, J.K. Dobbins coming in, that's not good news for Audric Estime. As I mentioned, he didn't get the jersey in the playoff game. He struggled with ball security to a degree where Sean Payton had to resort to remember the Titans level drills and training practices, having Audric carry a ball around the facility while his teammates are instructed to try to swat it out. But let's not forget, Sean Payton drafted Audric Estime in the 5th round. He banged the table for that guy. And when it came to a gotta-have-it clutch situation drive against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road in Arrowhead, it was Audric Estime getting the carries on the final drive of the game to try to put themselves in position for a game-winning field goal that was ultimately missed. But it was Audric Estime, not Javonte Williams, not Jaleel McLaughlin, who was given the trust in that moment. So that, combined with the fact that he was a draft pick of just 1 year ago, tells me that he is more safe in Sean Payton's mind and in Sean Payton's room, who, by the way, Sean Payton said, Audric Estime this week said, is a guy that needs carries to be able to develop that rhythm, and he's going to get those opportunities. That's a direct quote. He's going to get those opportunities. Jaleel McLaughlin, on the other hand, is an undrafted player and a great story. Somebody who came undrafted, was a very prolific runner in college, albeit at a slightly lower level than the Power Four, and showed burst and playmaking ability and speed that played outside of his physical skill set at times, but there just wasn't enough consistency, and his deficiencies from a size and weight perspective limited what he was able to do on a 3-down basis at the NFL level. Something that's not his fault, but a reality that somebody like Sean Payton has to consider. So RJ Harvey is clearly not going anywhere and is going to get his chance to eat up a fair share of the touches in the running back room. Audric Estime is a draft pick of last year, and Jaleel McLaughlin, who was signed not that long ago, and has proven to be that, is an undrafted player who's coming up on an expiring contract, and a veteran addition like J.K. Dobbins, who Sean Payton will have paid free agent veteran money to, is not going to cede carries to all three of those guys. And therefore, I do believe that even more so with the addition of J.K. Dobbins, Jaleel McLaughlin would find himself the odd man out in that running back room. Shifting gears to the NHL, we got some news yesterday about Brock Nelson and the fact that the Avalanche had re-signed their second-line center to a 3-year deal worth about $22.5 million. So right at that $7.5 million average annual value. Pretty decent considering the money that they've had to spread around and the money they were going to have to pay Mikko Rantanen. And it looked like with that move that for all intents and purposes, the Avalanche roster in 2025 was pretty logistically set. When you look at their different lines, they have a clear-cut center grouping of Nathan MacKinnon, Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle, and Jack Drury. Nelson, Coyle, and Drury all being free deadline acquisitions last season to help the Avalanche bolster depth from their top six on down. Then they are coupled with winger groupings like Marty Necas, Valerian Nichushkin, Arturi Lehkonen, the presumed full-time return of Gabriel Landeskog, and then bottom six guys like Logan O'Connor, Miles Wood, Parker Kelly, Ross Colton, etc. And then on the defensive pairing side, you have your top pairing, as always, of Cale Makar and Devon Taves, one of the better defensive pairings, in my opinion, in the NHL from a top D pairing perspective. And then Sammy G and Josh Manson as your second pairing. So by and large, there's still a little bit of tinkering left to be done. You're going to need to shore up probably some third line defensive pairing options and things of that nature. But for the most part, the meat and potatoes and maybe even an additional side dish of this Colorado Avalanche roster is set. With $1.2 million in cap space left to work with, it likely means that a guy like Jonathan Drouin, who is going to command about $5 million a year on a 3-year term kind of basis, is gone. Thank you very much for your services. And then you have to start looking at a potential salary dump or shift of a player in order to free up some space to spread around for the fringe portions of this roster. Our guy Will Peterson put out an article at DenverSports.com highlighting some different options that I thought was pretty on target. He mentions guys that I just mentioned, like the defensemen, Sammy Girard and Josh Manson, who are due $5 million and $4.5 million respectively, as you saw on your screen there. And then another forward option like Ross Colton, who's going to be making $4 million coming into this next year. One of those guys is certainly a candidate to be moved in order to spread some salary around to be able to fill up a third line defensive pairing and maybe shore up a bottom six forward with some tinkering here or there. The dark horse and maybe doomsday option would be if the rumors and the sprinkles that we heard from Sportsnet, Nick Kyprios, I believe his name was, and others who were talking about Marty Necas potentially not being thrilled with his time in Colorado. Necas has 1 year left on his deal after being sent over by Carolina in the Mikko Rantanen trade, the original Mikko Rantanen trade, and he's due up about $6.5 million. So while that's more money than the likes of a Sammy G, Josh Manson, or a Ross Colton, that is a guy who you basically banked on being the centerpiece that you were willing to shave off a top player in franchise history for. So that would be a doomsday scenario, and I will knock on whatever wood surface is necessary to hope that that is not the case. But I turn the question to you, looking at the Avalanche roster that we saw just there, how are you feeling about the completeness of this roster, ready to run it back in 2025 with the continued goal and expectation that a Stanley Cup final appearance, let alone a win, is necessary given the all-in nature of this team, the core that they have, and the moves that they've made to keep this window open? I feel confident in it. I will be very anxious and eager to see what a full offseason and a full regular season of Gabriel Landeskog, given the taste that we got at the tail end of the regular season in the AHL and into the postseason, what that looks like over 82 games, if he's ready and willing and able to sustain a long regular season like that. Is there load management involved? Is there some tinkering and some tweaking along the different lines to be able to take some pressure off of him and make sure that he's ready? I'm not sure. But Gabe seems sure that this upcoming season is going to be a statement for him. On his social media account, on his Instagram, Gabe posted a photo of himself on the ice with the caption that said this, quote, 1,032 days. Taking some time to digest this. Hard to put into words what it felt like being back on the ice with my teammates and in front of you amazing fans. Landeskog said it's been a journey, but man, has it been worth it. Thank you for the incredible support over the last 3 years, the thoughtful messages, the encouraging words on the street, or just the patience you've shown. I could not have done it without you. Excited for what's to come. So clearly, Gabe Landeskog, who was chomping at the bit and itching to get back on the ice this past season and into the postseason, is carrying into, based on that message, from my eyes, the full expectation of being ready and available to contribute in the regular season in 2025. And I do think that those kind of contributions, having a healthy Gabe, having a re-engaged Brock Nelson, Marty Necas, and the like, who were thrust into action with the Colorado Avalanche for like a 20-game sample or so before the postseason began, giving them a full offseason of work to gain continuity and familiarity, a full regular season to work with, and then potentially another couple of moves, whether it means the departure of a Ross Colton or a Josh Manson or potentially even a Sam Girard, to tinker around with the bottom six and a third-line defensive pairing. I do think that these kind of moves and re-signing Brock Nelson the way they did yesterday bodes well for the Colorado Avalanche going into 2025, and they should, in theory, be in a better position to gain better seeding in the NHL postseason and find themselves at a minimum, hopefully not in the situation they found themselves in this past season, where they're facing a team like the Dallas Stars in the opening round of the playoffs, a fellow division rival, or at a minimum, if they do have to face the Dallas Stars like that again, that the Colorado Avalanche are the team with the home ice advantage and that potentially have an easier path along that series of making it through. Because if they don't, consequences and situations could get very dire here in Colorado very fast. Chris McFarland, Jared Bednar, and the like, there was no kind of action taken from a front office perspective, given the disappointing in nature in the end of this past season. But I don't know that you can tap that well twice, given the nature of the all-in, push the chips into the center of the table style that they have structured this team around, and the window in the NHL for the Avalanche that continues to seemingly close a little bit more every postseason. A repeat performance in the 2025-2026 postseason that we saw in just this most recent one would be devastating for Colorado and the long-term future as championship contenders. We will find out more with free agency for the NHL about a month away from really heating up. We are going to hear from Sean Payton in just a number of minutes about the second week of OTA practices and the continued offseason programming for this year's Denver Broncos team. Maybe a little bit of a wink, wink, nod, nod, or a splash about the J.K. Dobbins visit and what that could mean for the Broncos running back room. And we are still on GM watch for the Denver Nuggets, all things we are keeping an eye on, and we will bring to you here on Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan, at DenverSports.com, and on shows like The Rundown on your Denver Sports social media channels. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you again tomorrow.